Hello and welcome to Lily's Library. So today we're going to be doing my January reading wrap up and my February TBR. So we're just going to get straight on into it. So in January, I read 6 books and I DNF'd 1. So we might talk about the DNF first and then we'll go through the books I actually read. So I ended up DNFing Little Bird. This is a graphic novel I picked up from the library. It sounded really interesting. It's kind of about like the resistance against the American Empire, and this is set in like a version of Canada. It sounded really interesting and I loved the art style of it. It kind of reminds me a lot of Ghibli for some reason, but I just feel like this wasn't really done that well. The storyline just was very disjointed and disconnected, and I really didn't know where anything was going and what was happening, and I just didn't really care enough to continue reading it, so I DNF'd it. I think a lot of people could still enjoy this, but it just wasn't it for me, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm glad that it was just a library book because I will return it. But a bit sad to have one DNF for the month, but better than more. But other than that DNF, the month itself was really solid. I had a lot of 4 and 5 star reads. The lowest rated book I had was 3 stars and then 3.5 stars. So it was overall very solid, but I'm going to go through the books I've actually read and completed and the order in which I read them. So my first book I finished for the month, and my most disappointing read was actually Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I still gave this like 3 stars. I just really had a lot of issues with this book. I think James Baldwin is a really beautiful writer and I'd be really intrigued to read more from him, but I wasn't a fan of this. I found there was a lot of misogyny in this that I really did not vibe with and I just couldn't get past. There was a transphobic moment as well, and I just really couldn't care about any of the characters. They were all really unlikable, which is I think is the point, obviously, but it just didn't work out for me. If you haven't heard of this book though, we follow a young man, David. He's an American man and he ends up going to Paris in the 1950s, and he's waiting there for his fiancée who's traveling around like Spain or other countries and stuff. And while he's waiting for her, he ends up meeting this other young man called Giovanni, and they immediately get involved in this relationship. And it's kind of about the obsession that grows there and the toxicity of it. And it is very heartbreaking in the end. A bit unexpected about how I thought it would go. I thought it'd be something different with the ending. But yeah, I just really had issues with a lot of the characters in this. Then the next book I read was my first 5-star book of the month, and definitely my favorite book of the month overall, and something I really want to reread soon. And that was The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This is just absolutely amazing. I really do love Stephen Graham Jones as a writer. I've only read 2 of his other books besides this one, and that is The Only Good Indians, which was my favorite book from him, but now this has topped that, and then My Heart is a Chainsaw, which I did love, but not as much as the other 2. But this is just absolutely phenomenal. Like I said, I gave this one 5 stars, but this is kind of like an epistolary style novel, so it's told through like journal entries and everything. And in this, we kind of start off with following this young woman who is a college professor and isn't getting tenure, and she needs to kind of get a project to kind of get more stuff from the university, you know, or the college, and she ends up getting contacted because her relative's journal was found hidden in this building, and the remains of it was hidden in the walls, and it's really old and dates back to the very early 1900s. I think it starts in like 1912, and then we kind of follow her as she is transcribing these, and we focus mostly on his diary and journal entries. We switch between him, who is a pastor in Montana in 1912, and it kind of talks about the late 1800s as well, but we follow him as this Native American guy who's dressed in pastor robes ends up coming up to the church and starts telling his story and confessing his sin. So we get chapters from the pastor himself talking about the day-to-day things that are happening, these bodies that are turning up outside of town, how people are disappearing, and then we've also got the chapters where it is telling the story of this man who is actually a Native American vampire. And it is really fascinating and really, really heartbreaking as well. This is just such a compelling novel and I couldn't put it down. It was absolutely phenomenal, and I love this so much. This is such a unique and interesting vampire book, especially the way that the vampires themselves work in this. It is just so interesting and I love this so much. Then the next book I read was an E-arc of Hold Your Horses by Ali K. Mulford. This is the 5th book in the Pringle Island Zoo series. I really loved this. I love all of these books. I just think they're all so much fun, but especially this one. But in this we follow Heron, who is one of the twins, and this is set a few years after the previous book in the series because Heron and Crane are actually 2 of the younger siblings. So we kind of did a bit of a time jump. So they are older now and they're both in their mid-late 20s, I think. But Heron is such an interesting character. They are asexual as well as non-binary. So a lot of this book is them exploring their sexuality and their gender, which I really loved. And then their female love interest is Hollis, who is also asexual and she has autism and ADHD. So there are such incredible representation in these books, this one especially, but I really loved the way their relationship was done, especially because they are both asexual. It was really nice having that. So this is obviously a book that has no spice in it, but like the tenderness and the sweetness of their relationship, it was just absolutely adorable, and this made me feel so happy and so seen, and I just absolutely loved this book. And it's like its exploration of gender and sexuality and the way it handled those discussions, especially around neurodivergence as well. Like it was just such a phenomenal book, and it's so much fun as well. But this is kind of set around Hollis, who ends up going to the zoo. She's been wanting to work at a zoo for ages, get a proper full-time job, but they're quite hard to come by. So she sees that there is an internship happening, and she kind of makes up her own backstory for herself, saying that she grew up in like Illinois or something on a horse ranch, when that's really not the case. And she ends up getting tasked to work around the zoo and do all these different tasks to try and become one of the people that will get a permanent job there. And her and Heron obviously cross paths a lot, and there's a lot of chaotic things that happen, and it's really fun, and I just absolutely loved this book so much. The next book I ended up reading was He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Chan. This was what I was hoping to read ages ago, but I just didn't get around to it, and I have very mixed feelings on this book. I absolutely loved She Who Became the Sun. I thought that was an incredible book, but He Who Drowned the World just wasn't the same. Now, I still rated this like 4 stars. It might end up going down. I just really am not sure overall how I feel. I think the plot of the first book was a lot better, and this one was kind of lacking in its own way. I just feel like a lot of what happened didn't really make too much sense, or it just kind of felt like it was going nowhere. The ending was unexpected in a good way, but I feel like we still never really got any proper character growth from anyone in this book, and it just didn't go how I had hoped it to go, and it was just a little bit underwhelming for me. Like, I still love this world, and I think the character work for the most part is really good, but I just wish we had got a lot more growth from them, especially after the journey that everyone had been on. But I just, yeah, I didn't love this one, but still thought it was solid. I think I might actually knock my rating down to like 3.5 stars, to be honest. Okay, then the next book I read was also a 2026 release, and that was The Poet Empress by Shen Tao. I actually had a e-arc of this sitting on my e-reader for ages, and I just never got around to reading it, and I only read it once it came out, and I'm annoyed that I didn't read it sooner, but I'm also happy that I have read it now. But this is a really dark fantasy. It is a Chinese-inspired fantasy. In this, we follow a young girl called Wei who lives in this really impoverished village. There is a really bad famine going on. Her family is struggling. The whole village is struggling. It starts with her burying her baby sister who has just died, and it's just her and her younger brother, because all their other siblings died at different stages of life because of the famine and because of the struggle in this village. But on New Year's Eve, her and her little brother end up going into the main like city sort of town area nearby, because on New Year's there's meant to be one of the princes or someone coming and giving blessings and gifts from the royal family. But it's never happened in her Wei's life. She's never seen them, but her brother is adamant about going. So they decide to go, and when she goes there, one of the princes actually ends up showing up and giving his blessings to people, which are these little notes, and they have to copy them out and write them out, and it'll make something happen. But that's not the only reason he was there. He goes on to say that he's actually there because his older brother, who was the second prince, he has now been named emperor in waiting, and they need people to come forward so he can choose concubines, basically. So all the young girls in the village and all the young women are told they have until this date to come back and to line up and be chosen. So Wei decides that she needs to do that. She needs to try and provide for her family, and this could be a chance to actually get her brother to school and to get her family taken care of. So on that day, she goes there, and everyone ends up laughing at her because she's just a village girl and is poor, and she ends up still getting chosen because she kind of speaks out and says that then the prince, who was meant to be super cruel, can laugh at himself rather than everyone else, and that it's up to him. So she gets taken in, and we kind of follow her as she navigates being one of the concubines and being through that really like toxic environment for that, as well as trying to connect to this prince himself, who is meant to be a tyrant and a horrible person. There are stories of him torturing people and killing people for no reason and animals for no reason. He's just meant to be super horrible, but he's got this shield, this magical shield thing that protects him and means he cannot be killed. So she's kind of trying to navigate what is going on and maybe seeing if there is a way that she can kill him, and she finds out that there is one thing that can be done to get rid of him forever, and that is when he actually fights to take over the crown, which is a giant dragon. He has to tame it. He cannot use that ability to protect himself, so that is the only time he will be vulnerable. And she's told of this thing called a heart poem, which is basically a love poem that you can write, and no matter where you are and where the other person is that you write it for, it will find them and it will kill them. So she starts trying to find out everything she can about him and his history in order to write this love poem to kill him. And it is just absolutely such a beautiful and and harrowing and disturbing book, but I absolutely loved it so much. This is very heavy. Like I said, there is a lot of torture in it. There's a lot of abuse. It is not a good book, but it's not a light book, so please check the content warnings. I've heard that this was marketed as an enemies to lovers, but that is really not the case at all. Not even close. So if you are expecting that going into this, please don't think about it that way. But I absolutely loved this book. I think I'm going to give it like 5 stars, maybe just under 5 stars. It was just insane. I cried quite a few times reading it, but I absolutely adored it. And I definitely need to be getting myself a physical copy soon. Okay, then the last book I ended up reading was a romance. I just needed something a bit lighter after The Poet Empress and He Who Drowned the World. And that was Happy Place by Emily Henry. So obviously People We Meet on Vacation, the movie, ended up coming out in January, and I really loved it. I wanted to read some other Emily Henry. I really wanted a summary book as well, seeing as it is summer in Australia. So I got from my library Happy Place, and I enjoyed this one. So this is following 2 characters. We've got Harriet and Wynne, and they were always seen as the perfect couple. They met like nearly a decade ago through mutual friends and had been together ever since. They were seen to always be together and happy and everything, and their friends loved their relationship. But they actually end up breaking up, and they have been split up for a few months when their friends convince both of them to go back to this little cottage or house like on the beach and stuff. It's more a mansion on the beach, to be honest, because it's their final summer they'll have there before one of the friends, her dad, sells the place off. And Harriet thinks it's just going to be her and her friends because Wynn's not meant to be going. He's meant to be taking this time off and not be going on holidays. They're going to alternate until they tell their friends, or they're going to use this as an opportunity to tell their friends. But he ends up getting roped into going, and they don't think any of their friends know, so they end up pretending to still be in a relationship throughout this whole time. And we kind of follow them as they explore what went wrong in their relationship and why they broke up. We also have chapters of them throughout different periods of stages of their relationship in different times and in different areas. So like when Harriet meets Wynn's family, when Wynne meets her family, and all of that stuff. And I had a really good time with this. I rated it 3.5 stars. I did find quite a few of the plot points to be quite predictable, but I still had a really good time with it. I do really love books that already focus on a relationship that has been substantiated, at least in this sense when it is a romantic one. I find it really interesting seeing people unpack the stuff that went wrong and trying to fix it, and that kind of second chance thing. This was a bit infuriating at times with some of it, just because they just honestly needed to speak and they weren't doing it, but it was really realistic the way that everything went down and that they unpacked and went through it. But I did really enjoy it. I thought it was really fun and sweet. Not my favorite Emily Henry, but still a very solid one, and it was just a really nice summer read. But those were the 6 books that I ended up reading in January. There was a book I was hoping to read that I didn't actually get around to finishing, or there was a few actually, so they're going to be carrying over into February. So we might start with those ones now for my February TBR. So first is Dragon Keeper by Robin Hobb. This is obviously book 1 in the Rainwild Chronicles. I was hoping to finish this before the end of January, but it just really didn't happen. I'm 300 and something pages through it of a 53 page book. So I'm hoping to finish it really soon and get it done early in the month, and then I can move on to the second book. But this is the Rainwild Chronicles. This is the next series I'm up to in my Realm of the Elderlings read along. You can see my other books up there. But this is set in the Rainwilds. We follow a bunch of people that are being tasked to take care of these hatchlings. They are dragons that have hatched but are really deformed, and they have to take them on a journey further north into the Rainwilds and upriver to try and find this area that they can maybe inhabit and then be more home in. And it is really interesting, and I really love exploring the Rainwilds. I know this is going to be really sad as well, just because of how the dragons are, but I can't wait to read more of this one. Now, just continuing with that, I'm also going to be reading Dragon Haven, which is book 2. So these are also for my Farseer Readers book club over in Fable. So as soon as I finish Dragon Keeper, which I'm hoping will be really soon, we'll move on to Dragon Haven and then continue throughout these. But this is the second book. I'm not going to say what it's about because I don't know what it's about. It's going to pick up after this one. But apparently these books were originally duologies and then were split into a quartet, and each book was split in half, which I do really like because these are at least a bit shorter and more manageable, but I'm very excited to read both of these. Then the other carryovers are 2 books that I have on my e-reader. The first one is actually a non-fiction, and that is Conspiracy Nation. I think I spoke about this briefly in my January TBR, but this was a library book that my hold came through on, and I just didn't get a chance to read much of it in January because it came through very late in the month. But this is by 2 Australian journalists. They're independent journalists, and they've spent like years now looking into conspiracy theories and kind of what causes them to grow in Australia and the kind of people that get involved. I read the introduction and it sounds really fascinating, so I'm definitely looking forward to reading more of this. And I wanted to try and read more nonfiction this year. I think I have a goal of 2 books, so if we can get this done, we're already halfway through it. But I really love learning and hearing about conspiracy theories. I think it's such an interesting thing, especially ones that are more right-wing, which a lot of this book is what this book focuses on, really. So I find it really fascinating, the kind of people that actually do get roped up into that stuff and believe it. So I'm intrigued to continue this one. Now in January, I was also hoping to read The Surviving Sky, and I just didn't get time to read it. I was struggling a bit with fantasy, to be honest. I know I did read a lot, but I think just after reading The Poet Empress and He Who Drowned the World, it just kind of like killed my brain a bit. It's also been a lot with work, so I just wasn't in the mood for it, but I'm definitely going to be focusing on this one and then also trying to get to the sequel. I'm in some buddy reads for this on Storygraph, so I'm hoping to read both of them in a month, but we'll see how we go because this is quite an ambitious TBR. Okay, the next 3 books are some physical books. So we have got a classic. I wanted to read 3 classics this year, and I would like to try and read one in February if I can. I'm not going to force myself if I'm not feeling it, because February is my birthday month, so I'm not going to force myself to do things that I don't enjoy. But my classic choice is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Obviously the movie is coming out and it looks trash, to be honest. I really don't want to see it, but seeing all the hype about it just makes me want to actually sit down and finish this book. I started reading it a few years ago and I got 100 and something pages in, so I might restart it and try and work my way through it and read more of it, because I did really enjoy what I did read. This is just a very difficult classic to read. There's a lot of like accents in it that are written in an odd way, so they can be hard to understand. And then it's just quite a dense book, but I would really love to read more of it. Then I've also got a book from my 12 books in 12 months TBR, and that is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. I was really tossing up which book I wanted to read from this TBR, because that's where The Buffalo Hunter was from as well. And I feel like everything else on this list isn't going to be anywhere near as good as that, but I've been wanting to read this one for ages, and it's also quite short, so I thought it could be a manageable book. But this is a dystopian set in a futuristic version of America. It's looking a lot of the stuff that happens. It says that America is a place of chaos where violence rules and only the rich and powerful are safe, which honestly sounds like how it is at the moment. But I've heard lots of good things about it. It's a book I've been wanting to read for years now, so I'm definitely going to be reading it, and then I'll buy the second book and I can read that in March. Then the final book on my TBR is an arc of a book that comes out in March, and that is Vow of Eternal Night. This is by Lily Crozier, who's an amazing book talker who I absolutely love. She is now an author, and this is her debut novel. This is a romantasy. It is about vampires. It's been comped to things like Beauty and the Beast. It's meant to have some similarities, and also if people love like House Moving Castle, I've heard that it's meant to be really good. But I got an arc of this which I'm still so excited about, and it is actually a signed one, which is absolutely insane. But I'm just so excited to read this one. I will read you the back of the book because I think it's just easier to kind of go off that to see what is happening. But it says Clara Wagner has always known that monsters are real, and that the worst of them is Prince Rayleigh of Rostenburg. For years, the prince has treated his people as livestock to sate his thirst for blood. But when he decides it's time to marry, Clara inadvertently finds herself at the center of his attention. Abducted and forced into a betrothal against her will, Clara would do anything to escape her fate, and so she is given an ultimatum: lift Rayleigh's vampiric curse before the end of the year, or become his bride for eternity. Which, it just sounds really good, and I'm really excited for this. I've seen lots of rave reviews about it, and I know this is just going to be something I love, so I'm probably going to get to this really soon, because I don't know why I didn't read it in January. I think I just wanted to save it for the right time, and I think now is the right time. But those are all of the books I read in January and the books I'm planning on reading in February. Overall, we've had a really solid beginning of the year with reading. I had hoped to read a few more books, but I'm very happy that the ones I did read were all really solid, and there was no real letdowns besides Giovanni's Room. But yeah, that's kind of it for this week's video. I will have my January reading vlog up very soon, hopefully. I'm trying to get it up a bit earlier than I'd originally planned, but we'll see how we go. But let me know what your favorite book you read in January was. And yeah, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.